Welcome to a new episode of Indie Talks, in which I'm hosting movie makers from the indie world, actors, stuntmen, fight coordinators, performers, to discuss their work, influences, conclusions they're facing, experiences, achievements, and advices. Today's guest is an American actor, movie maker, indie movie pioneer, action director, fight choreographer, fight coordinator, motion capture performer, and professional stuntman. He has been part of different projects. I mentioned Contour, Death Grip, Rope a Dope 1 and 2, Mortal Kombat Legacy, and many more. I consider him as one of the founders of indie action cinema in the United States. I welcome Mr. Eric Jacobus. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Derek. Nice to meet you, and thank you for having me on your show.
It's a great pleasure having you. Thank you for being part of the show. It's a great honor. I'm a huge fan, of course. I'm following you for years now. You're one of the people I was really excited about to bring to the podcast because your fabulous work, especially your outstanding and solid indie action shorts, which have been a great influence for me and many fans around the world. It's a great pleasure having you. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much. Talk to you about this.
Appreciate it, brother. I'm going to take you to the very beginning, of course. What is your martial art background? Did you practice martial arts in an early age? Formally, of course.
I had taken some martial arts when I was about 12 or 13. I did I think everyone in America is supposed to go through Kempo Karate at some point at a strip mall, and that was what I did. And, as a standard, I got my yellow belt and walked out, right? I didn't really take it very far, and I wasn't very interested in it, frankly. I took a little bit of kickboxing when I was 13 when I took some kickboxing, but then after 3 classes, the guy that was teaching me got evicted. I just kept on having, it seemed like I just had a bad spout of trying to take martial arts when I was a kid, so I kind of gave up on it, and I took gymnastics instead. I got into gymnastics, I got into weightlifting, and springboard diving. And those were sort of and some basketball. And those were really the things that kept me in shape through my teenage years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really until I started making movies that I started taking martial arts seriously.
Yeah, that's practicing a lot of sports and disciplines really contribute in making the performer really in a great shape. When did you discover your passion for martial art movies, and who were your influencers?
We had a camcorder in the hallway when I was a kid. There was this little cabinet. My dad had an old camcorder in there that he never used.
Yeah.
And so I'd take it out every couple weeks or so, and I would just play around with, like anybody who had a camcorder in their house. And back then it was a VHS camcorder. It was the size of a suitcase. And we'd, play around with stop motion and all that, but never did anything action related. And it was really when I started watching Jackie Chan movies that it hit me that doing a movie like that would be possible for someone like me, because I was in a small town up in Northern California, in a small near Oregon, and the idea of breaking into Hollywood, I just didn't even consider it at the time. I was a computer programmer. I was a major in math, and I sort of wanted to make films for fun on the side. And then one day we took that camcorder out after watching a bunch of Jackie Chan movies. And I had been reviewing those, obviously.
Yeah, I have seen some of them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that too. But that was that moment, and it was particularly after I saw Drunken Master 2.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah, 1994. Yes.
Yeah, 1994, and I saw it in 1999 or so.
Okay.
And I was watching that, just going like, how do you do something like that? Is that even possible for someone like me? He was my favorite at the time for sure. So I think him and I grew up on a lot of vaudeville movies, black and white comedies.
Yes.
By Chaplin and
Yeah.
Buster Keaton.
Yeah. Buster Keaton. Yeah. Of course.
And so, there was kind of a mixture there.
Yeah. Actually, Jackie Chan also was influenced by Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. Yeah. He was very inspired from them.
It's hard not to be, especially when you're. I mean, those guys were world famous.
Yeah. Yeah. There are legends.
Yeah. Keaton, Chaplin, and Harold Lloyd were, I think, the three biggest stars in the world at one point, and I think everybody saw them. And then what Jackie shared with Keaton was the theater background. Right?
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. Indeed, yes. A lot of people doesn't know that Jackie Chan was in the Chinese opera for 10 years. He has been training and a lot of discipline. That's what made Jackie Chan what he is. All the discipline in the Chinese opera.
I think that's what a lot of the time. I think that's what makes cinema what it is. Too.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the fact that our entire cinematic system is based off of theater. And it's obviously very far from that now. But you see people like Jackie Chan sort of trying to retain the theatrical feeling of it.
Yeah.
Play it kind of like a magic show, and that's what theater really is the illusion of certain things happening, and the illusion of the hits lining up, right? And that's what Chinese opera is so good at.
That's true.
Lining everything up for the audience. I mean, without that, what else? I mean, that's like the best background that you can have in theater. And Bruce Lee was another one too.
Yeah,
started out in theater. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, indeed. Tell me about the first fight scene ever you have ever done, and what camera did you use?
Okay, I think the camera that we had was it was a VHS-C, so it had the small VHS tape that you would put it. It was just a VHS tape, but it was small. You could put it into an adapter and put that in the VCR to edit it. I can't remember. It might have been a Canon. It was some piece of junk.
Yeah.
Consumer home video camera.
Yeah.
No digital, nothing. Right, just AV ports going out the back. And we went out. This is back in Reading. We had just watched Jet Li's last Hero in China, I think. And we went out and we said, we can do this. We're going to go and do this. And we went out around 5 p.m., went to the Civic Center, which is sort of the big place in Reading to go to. And it was always the place where we made probably 50 movies at this place. Because there was no security. It was big. It was cool looking. There were a lot of different levels. And we shot there for probably about 2 hours. I think we did the whole thing in about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I just remember, and we came up with everything on the fly. There was no previs, there was no rehearsal or anything like that. I remember at the end, after doing this, we sort of looked at each other and we realized what we had done. We had made an action movie, and we freaked out. We started screaming and jumping up and down. We were, a bunch of kids. But then I had to take it home and edit the thing and figure out how to put sound effects to it. And at that time, I had been editing clips for my reviews when I was reviewing Hong Kong movies. So I'd make little montages of the action from movies.
Yeah.
So I already knew how to edit. All I needed to do was put some sound to it. And so I went into a few Hong Kong films where I could find sound effects and isolate just the sound effect where there was no voice and no music.
Yeah.
And I pulled a few of those out, and I just ripped them all, as many of them out as I could. Threw it on there and uploaded the thing to the website and said, "Hey, everybody! So I've been reviewing action movies for a long time. I thought I'd make my own. Here you go." And that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that was a big step. Yeah. Since we talk about your first film, that short film, I think it was one of the reasons you created the Stunt People group. I know you're the founder of Stunt People. How did you come up with this idea? Is it because the first film, or you had this idea before?
I think once we made that short, we settled on that name, the Stunt People. And I mean, as a team, there was another thing that was happening at the time, which is the Jackass TV show.
Yeah,
on MTV.
Yeah.
And these guys weren't making action films, but they were going out and doing stunts with the home video camera. It was like a combination of a skate video with Buster Keaton.
Yeah, that's the crazy stuff.
Yeah, and
Steve
that was sort of like Yeah, and that was kind of like what we wanted to do, except with some story and comedy and sound effects. Not to, not to do insane stunts necessarily,
Yeah.
because we weren't doing jumps with golf carts or anything like that. We just wanted to do cool action scenes.
Yeah. How this concept of stunt people boosted your career and your teammates as well?
Well, it got us on the radar in a different way, I think, than is usual, because at the time, this was back in 2000. See, at the time, there was still a lot of talk about going to Hong Kong to be a stuntman. And there were a bunch of us that seriously considered this at one point. But, you know, or you either go to Hong Kong to be a stuntman, or you go to LA to be a stuntman.
Yeah.
And the way that you became a stuntman in LA is you go to LA, you get an audition, you try and get a role. You're going to get punched in the face and fall in the concrete. That's going to be sort of what you're known for a while as a stuntman. And a lot of people work their way up through that system, man, and that's a tough system. Like, much respect to people that do it that way. Now, for us, we were sort of playing this outside game where we were just some guys on the internet that were just making cool action. And that was sort of our audition, in a sense. We were kind of going around the system, or at least we were trying to. And, you know, the benefit of that is you get to do the action that you want. The cost of it is that you don't really get hired to do Hollywood blockbusters, right? You're not going to get the big paydays. So the entire time while we were doing this, we're all keeping day jobs.
Yeah. Okay. So, yes. Everyone had a regular job. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I was a programmer. I quit that to go to film school, and then once I got out of film school, I kept having day jobs for years.
Yes.
And I wasn't a full-time stuntman.
Yes, indeed.
Quote, unquote,
yeah.
Until 2013. That was 12 years into my career.
Indeed, that's a long way to go. And if you see other people who like to join action movie industry, they want the easy way. They don't know anything about all the struggle and the mistake and the failure you have to face every time before having that position.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same if you go to LA and do it that way too. I mean, asking a stunt guy, when they first went and got auditions, they weren't just a full-time stuntman.
Yeah, indeed.
They were parking cars, they were, you know, waiting tables, they were washing dishes.
Indeed.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we were all doing that stuff too, just up in Northern California. But the goal for us was to keep improving the filmmaking and the choreography side. And, you know, that was a very long road. But that was the goal, was to keep working at the indie side of things and try and make that work.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that indeed. Are you still in touch with your teammates for any possible future indie projects?
Yeah, I talked to a bunch of those guys a lot. I mean, some of the guys from Reading I still talk to. Just saw a few of them recently, actually, and I talked to the people from the Bay Area also. Dennis, I keep in contact with a lot.
Dennis
as well.
Rule. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, a lot of those guys, a lot of those women, they didn't pursue stunts very much after that. They sort of stuck with their jobs. They have families. They have kids.
Yes, indeed.
They have very fulfilling lives right now.
Yeah.
And here I am still, like, you know, kicking away at this indie thing, trying to keep this thing going.
Yeah.
I have a family too, but you know, that's just the nature of it. When you have a crew, and you know, a lot of them are just they couldn't afford the risk, right? A lot of them started families, and I didn't have a family back then.
Yeah.
And so I was free to just sort of keep pursuing this thing, and, you know, building up savings and burn it out, and build up savings and burn it out, and that was just what I kept doing.
Yeah, indeed. And it's a matter also.
But eventually, I remember the first gig I got was in 2003, and this is after we put we had a short film on the Everyone is Kung Fu Fighting DVD, and somebody called me up and said, I would like to hire you to do a feature film and to be a star in my feature film. It was like a horror action film, and I got $200 to star in a feature film. It was a huge payday for me.
Yeah.
That was my first gig, and then next big thing was that J.J. Perry saw Contour, and he emailed me one day, and
Yeah.
he said in an email, just a quick email. I think I kept the email. He said, "I saw Contour. Good stuff, bro."
Yeah, really
I was
good
like, "Oh,
stuff.
cool! I'm getting that
Yeah.
out there." So it was working. It just took a long time.
Yeah, indeed. You know, we will talk about Counter, of course, because one of your iconic films. A screenwriter and a stunt performer should always maintain the best shape possible to stay ready for any possible jobs. What is your training routine?
I've always approached fitness very carefully because in my early days, I would hit the gym hard in between shoots. And I would spar hard, I would work out hard, I would lift weights hard, and I'd get injured.
Yeah,
Like all the time.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
get injured
It's
all the time
common.
working out. I'd get injured messing around, showing off. I'd get injured saying like, "Hey everybody, I learned this thing, and there's no camera rolling. It's at a family picnic or something. I do a backflip and I break my toe, and it's like, well, now I can't shoot for a month, you know." And so I've always been, well, since then, as I've grown older, I've sort of taken more care to be cautious.
You know, a lot of stuntmen and screenwriters, and they're living in Los Angeles. They're making their way there. Why Eric Jacobus didn't move to Los Angeles, since it is the land of movie making? Is it totally fine for you
Uh,
to settle in San Francisco?
How do I answer that? Because a lot of people were doing that after Contour. You know, person after person would
Yeah,
sort of peel off and go to LA and become successful. You know, and I I don't know. I think maybe I'm stubborn. You know, I wanted to keep working at the craft of filmmaking, and that's I don't know. I don't know how well I would have done in the system, and I had my shot. Don't get me wrong. So in
yeah,
2012, when I got called on to do Mortal Kombat Legacy, and you know, which is great. You know, Lauren Ellen Clayton brought me onto that, and I got to fight alongside Mark Dacascos and some really talented, some really talented people on a franchise that I loved. And but like 2/3 of the fight got cut from the final edit, and it was I don't know. I mean, I did a few more jobs too, and a lot of the time, and it's just the nature of it, right? Your work gets edited however it's going to be edited. It's going to be shot however it's shot. And being stubborn, I just wanted to do action in a good way. I really wanted, because every time I would see these bad decisions made, and I mean, okay, fine, maybe for the studio they're not bad decisions because they make money. What can I say, right? Sometimes they make really terrible action scenes in great movies, and those movies make a lot of money. So those terrible action scenes, when I watch the terrible action scenes, there's a part of me that lights up inside that says like, yeah, but it could have been better. But within the system, it's kind of like you're supposed to count your blessings when you're in that system. So even if you work on a movie and your action gets butchered in the editing, or it gets butchered, inside the camera, you're supposed to count your blessings with that. And I think I'm just too stubborn for that. And I would look at those decisions and I would say, man, I would have done this, I would have done that. And that really makes you kind of a sourpuss on set and makes you stubborn. And I know, I get it. And so I stuck it out in the Bay Area for a while. I also met my wife there, and
okay.
sort of like, and I had a lot of family there too. So I kind of like decided I'd stay there for a while and just try and make that work. And then when I had, my first child, it was in the Bay Area, and a second child, and
Yeah,
wow, this is becoming home, and the idea of moving to LA became further and further, off in the horizon.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, indeed.
so
Uh,
that was really the end game, was making something of being able to stay where I was at and make that work.
let's discuss the history of indie action cinema. Zero Gravity, Vlad, Manny Manzanares are few among a lot of people who created action magic during the first decade after 2000. I know you worked with many of these guys. What could you tell about this old era?
Uh, so that was a really exciting time. And when I started, this is about 2000, there were a few of these groups out there in the scene already. One of them was Zero Gravity, and they were the ones that really were they were really sort of bringing this interesting flavor to indie filmmaking, right? They were sort of mixing Hong Kong style martial arts with trick martial arts, which was pretty new at the time, trick sports karate and whatnot, capoeira, and and also very backyard, right? And then there was Quoon, and Quoon is really a high production value, and the Todd Roy put a lot of a lot of focus on the production value of Quoon episodes, and and being a comedy series as well, it really appealed to me. And then there were a few others too, like Ara Payaya, who was I think in the UK, and he was doing backyard Jackie Chan style movies. And at that time, we were all on a forum called Project J, which is a Jackie Chan website run by a Japanese dude. And when that website shut down, everybody moved to my forum. A bunch of people did, because I had a website, and being a computer programmer, I had made my website, so it was actually easy for me to kind of take all this traffic in. And that was really exciting, because once we started putting videos up on the forum, it was sort of like early YouTube in a way, where the comments were brutal. We were really rough on each other, but we would share sound effects. We would share filmmaking tips. We would critique camera angles. We would talk about how Jackie Chan shoots things this way, Sammo Hung shoots things that way, Yuen Biao throws kicks like this, Jackie Chan throws kicks like that. There was a lot of this stuff, and we were just sort of copying what we saw in Hong Kong cinema, and that was our Bible. In particular, Jackie Chan, My Stunts was our Bible when it came to making action films. And years of this, of a lot of people coming onto the forum and saying, "Hey, I tried this out. I went and shot a fight scene with some friends in my backyard. What do you guys think?" And there'd be know-it-alls on there who would just say a bunch of stuff where they didn't know what they're talking about. And then there were a lot of people on there who had never made movies but were great but really knew their stuff, and they could really give good references. So it was a big mix of people. And there were also, there were people from all around the world also. There's guys from Germany, guys from Eastern Europe. There were everywhere, man. And that was what was so cool about it. I mean, there was a guy from Turkey. His name was Muhtar. I remember him very well. And he would do these like zero budget action movies, and he was passionate, man. He'd do long movies, and he'd put them out all the time. That stuff was really cool, man. It was a community. Which, like I said, we would share all of our resources. If we had muzzle flashes, we would share those. And I was moderating the forum too, to make sure nothing got out of hand. It was a ton of fun. 10 years of doing that. Maybe it was like 12 years of doing that on that forum.
And that's what got you to a top level stunt performer and the screenwriter. Contour was a remarkable feature film in your career, with the participation of a super talented cast. I mentioned Indy Lang, Dennis Rule, Donovan McKendrick, Vlad Rimberg, and many more. I consider this film as a classic from the indie world, and a reference for many indie action movie makers. How can you describe this unique experience?
I've been watching a lot of Sammo Hung and Lucky Star movies at the time. And so Sammo Hung would do these films with Yuen Biao and Jackie Chan and a bunch of different guys, and the whole setup was a bunch of guys get into a situation and fight a bunch of other guys, right? And I wanted to make that sort of fun action movie with an ensemble cast, and wanted to do comedy, obviously. And I wrote that script based off of a character from Undercut, where it was literally one shot from Undercut. You blink and you miss this shot, but there's a guy beating another guy up with a pineapple, and he's wearing like a Hawaiian shirt, and he's got blood all over his Hawaiian shirt. And I looked at this character, and that was me, and I was like, that could be a character right there, like a crazy tour guide. And I came up with that idea and wrote it. I think I wrote that script in 3 weeks, maybe. The script was 40 pages. I went to the guy who had hired me on my first gig, the one that I mentioned, and I said, "Hey, I've got this idea for a feature film script." And he said, "Well, I'll give you $5,000 if you let me distribute it."
Yeah.
I took that $5,000 and spent that $5,000 very slowly over the course of a year, and just made that movie.
Yeah.
You know, and I was finishing college at the time, so I was actually fulfilling, I think, 6 units of like my last 6 units doing that movie. And man, I mean, it was a unique experience because we weren't constrained by time. We were all 22, 23 years old, so we didn't have anything holding us back. We could just go whenever we needed. You know, we would do 3 days a week or so. Most of it was at that warehouse in the end. And we would just show up at, I don't know, 9 o'clock, wander in there at 10 after hanging out and talking about the movies we've been watching. We might watch something on the laptop. We would watch the edit of the fight because I would edit it every night. We would look at the fight. We'd review it. We'd say, do we need to reshoot anything? We usually would. And then we'd just start coming up with ideas. And there were days where we came up with nothing. And again, Hong Kong films being our Bible, we thought that was fine. We thought it was okay to show up on set and come up with nothing and go home. And yeah, when you're 22 years old, that is fine.
You know, the final fight was one of the greatest fight scenes ever, not only from the indie world, but it's a classic considering the length and the rhythm and the speed and the ties, complicated fight. You and Dennis Rule made one hell of a fight scene. Was that the hardest fight you have ever done? And how long it took you to make it?
I can't remember how many days we clocked in with that one. It must have been, yeah, we must have clocked like 10 days doing that fight. And again, we're talking about showing up at 10 a.m. and finishing at 2 p.m. because Dennis would have to go and teach Hapkido. I would have to go and do my homework because I was still in college.
Yeah.
It was, you know, and I would, but I would go home and edit the fight immediately after shooting. So probably 10 days or so. I think it was 5 for the first half, 5 for the second half. And again, there were days where we went in and did nothing except just try and come up with ideas. And yeah, it was tough. I think that, I think physically it wasn't quite as demanding as some of the other fights I had done. Like the end fight from Undercut, actually, maybe the opening fight from Undercut. Both of those fights were incredibly difficult physically to do. But this fight in Contour was this one was much more of like a mental challenge. Like, how do we make an interesting fight between two people that just goes beyond kicking and punching? And then we came up with the fight, the tie gag, where it's like, oh, we're both wearing ties. Why don't we do something with that? And we had done, you know, everybody had seen the Jackie Chan fight from Who Am I, where he gets the guy's tie, right? And we thought, oh, let's just double that up and make an entire fight out of that. And then we also added in the long take at the end of it. And we were inspired by, how did we come up with the long take at the end? It must have been, I can't remember what came out at the time. It might have been Old Boy. Might have come out.
Okay, yeah.
The long take in the hallway. Yeah. And so we might have been inspired by that to do that long take at the end of that fight.
It was really spectacular and iconic. And yeah, it's a reference fight scene for a lot of people. You know, Ropa Dope 1 and 2 were remarkable as well. For me, Ropa Dope 1 is my favorite of yourself, of course. I have watched it over and over. I liked the concept, the time concept, fight scenes, the way the main character mastered martial art from scratches, and the way also you did illustrated that as an actor. The comedy was really fun and interesting. How much time you spent on the first Ropa Dope?
The first Rope-a-Dope was a 4-day shoot, and I don't think we did any previs. There was no major prep for that. We just went out and started doing it. The end fight had, I think we did a little bit of previs on the end fight, just like a really brief thing to just sort of time out or kind of map out our beats of the end fight. But no, in the end, that was a 4-day shoot for the first one.
Now we move to talk about God of War, of course. I know you were cast for as a fight motion performer. How did you get that job?
I had been, so in 2015, my mentor brought me to China and we did a previs and action design on a movie called Heart of a Champion. He was the stunt coordinator for it. And the when I came home, I was really sick after that trip. I got really sick in China.
Hey.
And I had been only doing previs, long nights. I was so unhealthy after that trip. And so I just wanted to focus on getting back in shape and working on my own skills. And by that time too, a lot of the stunt people had just moved on, and I had sort of moved on in a way too, because I was doing these films overseas. I had just done one in Hong Kong, and then I was doing this one in China. So everybody's career was kind of going in their own directions, and so I wanted to get back into doing performance, but I didn't have any performers to work with. And so one of the things I started doing was copying move lists from Tekken. So I would just take the character's move list from Tekken, and I would just copy it in my garage, and I'd play it side by side. And it was a fun physical challenge for me, and that's all it was supposed to be. And meanwhile, I was trying to get more gigs, and failing. I was not getting any gigs after this job in China. And so here I am in the garage. I'm wearing a red gi with the sleeves cut off, and a Paul Phoenix hair, like I'm wearing this goofy hat on my head. And my wife walks in and she asks me, "What are you doing? What is this?" And I said, "I don't know, but I don't have any other thing I can do right now. No jobs are coming in, so I'm just going to do this. I'm just working on my skills." So I did, 15 or 20 or 30 of those, I think, and they started going viral. And that by no means was going to provide enough income, even though they were viral. It's just not enough income. You need to, if you want to live off of YouTube ad revenue, you have to make constant videos. I mean, one a day, and there's no way I could pump out one of these a day. Each one took at least a week.
Indeed.
I would take, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days sometimes to shoot these move lists, and then I would edit for another week after that. So it was, probably a 2-week process a lot of the time. And somebody from Sony on the God of War team, specifically Santa Monica Studio is the company that makes God of War. The animators, and a lot of what game animators do is they watch YouTube and they look at how people move around on YouTube. Or if you're an animator that specializes in creatures, you're watching crocodile videos all day. If you have to animate a scene in a game where somebody gets killed by a crocodile, you're probably watching videos of crocodiles killing people, right? So they were working on God of War, and they were trying to find interesting movement videos, and they came across mine. And they said, "Well, why don't we just try hiring this guy and bringing him in?" And they told me that I knew how to move like a video game character, which I didn't even know was a skill. Because what I was doing with the Tekken in real life videos was I was starting in the character pose. I would do the attack very quickly and then get back to the character pose. And I didn't know that that's a skill, to be able to go from pose to the attack and then back to pose quickly. That's actually exactly what you do when you do motion capture. And at any rate, they brought me in. I had just had my first son at the time. They said, "You're playing a bearded man protecting his son." I said, "That is exactly who I am right now."
Yeah.
Let me at it. Indeed. They gave me an axe. They said, "It's God of War, man. So kill it." And so I had an 8-hour audition, and the rest is history.
Yeah. The game was really fabulous, the cinematography and fight scenes. I have played it myself. Tell me, what is the difference between making action movies and making motion capture, and which one is the hardest?
They are in many ways totally different. and in many ways, they're very similar. So I'll start with the differences. So with indie filmmaking, you have a cameraman who looks through the viewfinder and sees people
Yeah.
moving around. And then you shoot, and then you cut, and then you play back. And when you watch the viewfinder, that is what you have, right? In motion capture, you don't have to have a cameraman. You have a suit
Yeah.
on, and the
Yeah,
suit,
yeah.
the suit is essentially just tracking your movement, and that gets recorded by a bunch of cameras in a room,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
using an inertial system. We use the Movella Extend system, so it's all inside the suit. It just records your movement data, and so there doesn't have to be a cameraman there. There can be a cameraman there using what's called a virtual camera. It's pretty much like an iPad, where you hold up the iPad. So it's hard to imagine if you haven't done it, but you kind of have to imagine that stereotypical motion capture scene in the white room with a bunch of cameras around, the people wearing the goofy Velcro suits with the balls all over them, right? And when a human is just looking at that, you just see people with Velcro suits with balls on them moving around, right? But if you hold up this very special sort of iPad and you look through that iPad at that person, you can see that person as the character on the iPad. And that's called virtual production in a nutshell. And if you hit record on that iPad and you record a fight scene between two people or 15 people or whatever it is in motion capture, and you stop and you play back, if somehow somebody went out of frame, you can fix that. You can fix everything. It's so fundamentally different than standard filmmaking, because what you record on the video camera, it can be totally fixed. Even if a punch, like if you're throwing a punch on camera, the punch has to line up. If it doesn't line up, you have to do it again and again and again until you line up the punch correctly, right? And of course, you can sort of fudge that with VFX sometimes, but that's difficult. But with motion capture, if you're 10 feet away from a guy and you punch, you can just move that person 10 feet closer to the opponent and then match it up. So it's totally different. It's a totally different process. And if you're able to harness that technology of motion capture and design action with that, well, now you sort of can think of action very differently, where you're not as concerned about punches lining up. You're not as concerned about doing perfect takes, getting the speed right, and all that stuff can be fixed very easily and nobody will notice. You can instead focus on very different things. You can experiment with new kinds of action that you can't do with live action. So that's the difference. And also, people need to understand too that there are two kinds of motion capture. Same technology, but really sort of two different production styles. The first one is called performance capture, or PCAP. PCAP is a lot like filmmaking, where you have people on the set doing lines, walking around.
Yeah.
People walking around, a whole fight scene. It's a whole scene a lot of the time that they'll shoot. And sometimes, again, there's somebody there with a camera who's recording that, and they'll record the camera movement into the system as well, so that all of it is rendered together. So even the cameraman's movement is like within the scene, right? And that's PCAP. But then on the other side, most of the game is game capture. I call it GCAP or game cap.
Okay.
So game cap, you're building, it's like little Lego pieces where you're building a combat system. So for example, if you push forward on the thumbstick and the character moves forward a step, that's a motion capture animation. You're going to capture that. That's one shot. You push backward on the stick, you're going to capture that animation. Push right, you strafe right. Push left, you strafe left. Okay, you're going to turn. Okay, that's a motion. Turn left, that's a motion. How about turning 180? Okay, we got to get that. We got to get that. You have to capture all of those tiny little Lego pieces that you then put together within a state machine, so that depending on which button the player presses, it plays that animation. And the player is going to see that animation tens of thousands of times, 100,000 times. So, whereas in a fight scene in God of War, the player might see that fight scene usually just once. They might see it a second time. you're a lot more forgiving. As a viewer, you're much more forgiving of these scenes, right? Because you're not seeing them over and over. So if the performance isn't perfect, that's okay, not a big deal. But in gameplay, when you hit the normal attack button, when Kratos swings his axe or throws a punch, right? People are going to see that 100,000 times. That
Yes.
animation has to look good every time people see it. It has to be that good. So there's a different sort of demand on the performer when it comes to capturing those kinds of animations. And I had done a little bit of motion capture before God of War, and frankly, it had been a little bit easier than God of War. In God of War,
Yeah.
I think I really got the mocap experience because not only was I doing the PCAP, but I was also doing the game capture for Kratos. And Kratos has a very specific way of moving. They were trying to figure out what that style of movement was at the time. And we would do 15 takes of a punch just to get that punch perfect. And they wanted to touch the animation in post as little as possible because again, if you throw a punch like this, they can change that in animation so that you can they'll bend the arm a little bit if they have to, right? And they can change the speed and all that, but they wanted to change it as little as possible. So it was very difficult. It was like taking a new martial art. I felt like I got my white belt in doing God of War, and
Yeah.
I did that for 2 years and came out with a fresh new understanding of motion capture.
Yeah. Were you hired for the second sequel, God of War Ragnarok?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see that.
Yeah, me
You know,
too.
Pictionary was a pretty fun, interesting concept in which you tried to show the diversity in kicking. How did you come up with this concept?
There had been a Japanese, it was a judo video that was floating around for a while. It was just a montage of, I think, 30 judo throws, and each one of them, it had a little subtitle underneath that was the name of the fall. And this video went viral, and I thought, man, that's cool. I mean, why don't they do that for something like kicking where you can show all the different kicks, but nothing had ever been done like that. Now, back in the day, in the late 90s, there were websites like Bylang that had compilations of every kick, every kind of trick kick. And Juji Mufu was another one who he was a very skinny guy back then in the late 90s. Now he's huge, but he was doing trick martial art kicks, and he was doing the 540, 720, cheat nine, jackknife. They would name all these kicks. And so it was just a matter of compiling all that stuff, doing the ones that I could do. There were some that I still can't do. I never got my cork round. There were a bunch of them that I just
Yeah,
never even tried to do, but I wanted to get at least the basic ones and all the iterations on those basic kicks. There's another film too, The Art of High Impact Kicking. That's Huang Zhang Li's movie from, I think it's 1979 or something. And he did all the variations of the 8 kicks. And again, this is just me being, I don't know, kind of a completionist where I said like, well, I'm going to find like 200 kicks and put them into one video. And I made a lot of them up, but I always tried to name them in a way that made sense, right? There would be some from Hong Kong movies that had never been named, had never really
yeah,
been done many times before. But I put the name in there to try and give credit to whoever came up with it. And there's some joke ones in there too. Anyway, I did that over the course of
yeah,
like probably a year. And it was just, every night I would work on like 2 kicks and then go home, pick the best one, and stick it in. And that was actually the thing that I did before Tekken in real life. And the Kictionary came out first. And actually the reason I was doing Tekken in real life was to try and find more kicks in Tekken. And I just ended up doing all the Tekken moves.
yeah. It was really interesting, and a lot. I have seen that concept in many of websites. It went viral. A lot of people have seen it. Now we move to talk, of course, about Hong Kong cinema, which is a tradition in my show. The 80s was absolutely the golden age of Hong Kong cinema. Those intense fight scenes using full contact kickboxing techniques beside the crazy stunts. The audience can feel the intensity and power in every aspect of this era. What this era meant to you and how it did influence you.
Hmm. Yeah, it is the golden era for us because we're millennials. I think that there's the Gen X, the Generation X group, they see also the Bruce Lee era as the golden era, and
Yeah,
there's something to that, right? Because Bruce Lee really predated all of this by 10 years, and
yeah. It
I'm
was the
starting.
first one to illustrate
Yeah,
Kung
and
Fu.
he was I'm actually doing action breakdowns now for my YouTube channel. My first one is going to be about Bruce Lee and the art of cinematic kicking, because before Bruce Lee, I challenge anybody to find a movie or a show or anything where somebody did cinematic kicking, and I could not find anything. Very
Yeah,
little. Nobody
yeah,
was really kicking dynamically until it wasn't even. I mean, even in the Green Hornet, he wasn't really doing the kicks were cool, but they were kind of Chinese kicks. They were, and he didn't do too many of them. It was really the Big Boss in 1971. That's when Bruce brought Korean style Shotokan, so Korean style Taekwondo and Shotokan, and bringing all of these, Japanese and Korean kicks into Hong Kong cinema and shooting them in a really interesting way. And I say this because that was really foundational for the 80s, because had he not done that, I don't think Sammo Hung would have developed the kicking style that he came up with, because Sammo Hung's filmmaking arguably is, in terms of action filmmaking, he's arguably the best that ever was. But I think a lot of what a lot of his cinematic language came from those Bruce Lee movies, where Bruce was kicking and shooting it in a certain way to make the lines look good on kicks. They looked very geometric. There was something very aesthetically pleasing about those kicks.
yeah,
And Bruce was figuring that stuff out because he had a home video camera and he was filming himself in the backyard doing those kicks. I don't think he was really training to be a martial artist. I think he was training to be a filmmaker. I think that was his secret sauce. And so fast forward, Sammo Hung, I think 79 to 1990 or so. It's just, it's the golden years, and it's sort of an amalgamation of things happening, right? Where you look at just someone like Sammo, man, you could do an entire hour just on Sammo. Sammo is making shapes look good, martial arts shapes, right? The kind of
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah,
Right? He's
yeah.
making
A lot
them
of power in his style.
tons of power. He knew how to pose. He knew where to put people on camera so that your eyes were directed toward them. When Sammo is fighting on camera, you cannot help but look at him. And it's a combination of a lot of things. But I think one of those things was just making shapes sticky and strong and powerful. It's kind of like a combination of Chinese style martial arts and Korean and karate. So it's kind of like all Asian martial arts kind of mixed up into one. And when you watch Sammo move around, he's mixing Chinese martial arts with Hapkido, Korean kicks, Chinese and Japanese kicks too. And yeah, it's probably as good as it gets right there in terms of Hong Kong cinema. And a lot of us grew up on that stuff.
Yeah, it's we all grew up with the Hong Kong cinema back in 1990, in the 90s, especially because we were kids, we were too young, and we had only the VHS devices that we can in which we can see all those films.
Yeah.
The Hong Kong martial art cinema is not the same as before. There is a lot of changes. We don't see that rage and the insanity in fights and that power. And maybe because some changes, political changes, and something like that. We see a lot of CGI, a lot of wire work. They kind of Americanized the industry. Why this change, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about when you look at what Jackie Chan was doing, for example. So when Jackie first started directing martial art movies, one of his first movies was Dragon Lord. He's doing Young Master. His early films were very sort of traditional, where he would go up against one villain at the end. It was a one-on-one fight. And then you sort of see him diverging from that, when he starts doing Police Story, right? He arguably invents the modern Hong Kong film with Police Story. Because that is, when you watch that movie, the structure of that movie is a very American style movie. And I think
Yeah,
Jackie was
yeah.
very smart in that sense, where he was combining a sort of Hong Kong aesthetic with an American structure, where you have the vehicles, you have the bus scene, you have the scene where they drive down the village at the in the beginning, that fight scene at the mall. There's
Yeah,
not really like one
yeah,
villain.
fully
There
true.
kind of is a villain, but it's all mixed in with a bunch of stunts, and it's kind of like the world against Jackie Chan. And that's almost like a kind of an American action hero style movie. So that, those that trend was sort of underway, I would say. And every time Sammo would bring Jackie into a movie, what would Sammo do? Sammo would pit him up against one guy every time, because that was Sammo's style, was to put Jackie one-on-one
Yeah,
against Benny Urquidez twice. And whatever it might be, all the Lucky Stars movies, he would make Jackie fight one guy. It wasn't really until Mr. Nice Guy when Sammo said, all right, it's going to be Jackie versus the world. He sort of let Jackie do his style. So, it's just like anywhere where Hong Kong was trying to internationalize and be more, I hate to say it, they're trying to be more American in a lot of
yeah,
ways.
yeah, indeed.
In
Yeah,
a lot of ways, America at the time, you look at the late 90s, for example. I mean, the late 90s in America was like the greatest time ever for American martial art films, because
yeah,
all those guys were coming over because, again, Hong Kong was going over to the PRC at the time. So they were all coming over in, 95, 96 and doing American films. Chow Yun-fat, Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, Michelle Yeoh, Corey Yun, Jet Li, they all did these American martial art movies. And they're some of the best ones ever made. Yuen Ping did The Matrix at that time. So it was kind of like America was taking a cue from Hong Kong at the same time. And that's, interestingly, that's when a lot of us were coming up, is during that period where we're watching American cinema shift. Like when The Matrix comes out in America,
yeah,
there's some kind of sea change underway, right? And
yeah.
a lot of us were really inspired by that.
The stunt work is a distinguished element in Hong Kong cinema, which influenced you, of course. Did you get any serious injuries during your career?
Yeah, I've had one serious injury, and again, it was during training. It's always during training. I never get injured on movies. I mean, I've had small injuries on movies and they heal within a week, but it's the injuries that you get when you're training that take years to heal. It was so small too. I was doing a front tuck, a front flip on a gymnastics floor, and I under rotated it.
Yeah,
And I don't remember when it was. I think it was 2003, maybe 2005. I get it mixed up, but I under rotated it, and because the gymnastics floor is springy, I landed in an arch,
yeah, yeah.
right? And I landed in
You
an
have
arch
to
like
do
this,
it back.
and then my legs bounced up. My upper body stayed here, and it pinched my L5 disc and just
Okay.
blew that thing out the side. And
Ah,
my legs started tingling immediately. I couldn't tie my shoes for 6 months. Couldn't sleep in a bed for 6 months. I couldn't sit for 6 months. Um,
that was
and then
terrible. Yeah,
the disc was out, and I got an MRI. So your spine has these little cushions in between, right? If I were to demonstrate it with, this isn't a good example, but you have this cushion in between your spine. Well, my disc was like this, and then over time, I remember an old
yeah,
guy telling me, "Oh yeah, I've had those too. Those discs, they just
yeah,
want to move back. They just want to go back in." And I got a back brace, and this is after 3 years of pain because it kept happening. 3 years, and every kind of operation known to man done on it, and nothing's fixing it. And I put a
yeah.
back brace on, and after 2 weeks, that stupid disc goes right back into my spine, and I'm back to normal. So there is something to the kind of traditional Chinese style of medicine where it's kind of like, let the body do what it needs to do, and then help it get everything else out of the way so that the body can do what it needs to do. It's amazing what our bodies can do if we just kind of get out of the way. Yeah, 3 years they were kind of like lost in my memory because of that stupid injury. So I would never wish that injury on anybody. Other than that, though, I've been, I don't, nothing major. I still have a shoulder injury
Yeah.
from Death Grip, but it's not. There's nothing to write home about. It would be embarrassing for me to talk about my injuries compared to the injuries that like real stuntmen get. So I'll just stop with that.
Yeah, that's sometimes, yeah, it's really, really serious on the sets of films. A lot of stuntmen lost their lives. I have an interesting question for you. With which Hong Kong icon, I mean actor, would you work? From present or past, dead or alive?
I think the one I would love to have worked with the most. Oh man, jeez, um, that's a tough one. I think Samo probably brought out the best in people. And I don't know how he did it. I don't want to. Like who knows what mental games he was playing with people to get them so fired up in those fights that he did. I know that he's extremely competitive, and my mentor Clayton Barber, he's very competitive like that, and he would push me. And so Clayton produced Rope It Up 1 and 2, and he directed Blindsided. And there is a part of me that kind of puts a wall up when things get tough, when I think I might get hurt, when things are getting a little bit too dangerous. I tend to back away. I'm a little bit cautious, and Clayton would be that hand behind me that would say like, no, you will go forward and you will fight this guy, and you might get injured, but you do it, otherwise this movie's gonna suck. And that's why you have Rope It Up 1 and 2 and Blindsided the way that we do, because it's guys like him that push. And I think Samo was probably one of those guys. I'm sure Jackie pushes people too, but I don't think it doesn't seem like Jackie pushes people as hard. I think he sort of lets people
Samo, yes.
And Samo is the one that really pushes people.
Yeah, he's very tough on the set. Like Cynthia Rothrock had an interview with Scott Adkins. She talked about her experience with Sammo Hung. She said it was the toughest and the hardest experience in her life.
Yeah.
She encountered many injuries, and she had to go to hospitals on many occasions.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a very demanding guy.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at how Jackie fights Benny Urquidez in Wheels on Meals, I don't know if that fight would have looked like that if Jackie had directed that fight. Like I know that Jackie had some push in that fight, but Samo is the one that's probably matchmaking here, and he when the two of them are fighting, it looks like a real fight because it looks like they're just trying to fight each other. And that's what makes a great fight, man.
You see the power, yes.
That's what makes a great fight, man.
The contact, yes. Some real punches I have seen in the fight scene. Jackie and Benny Urquidez made one of the greatest Hong Kong cinema fight scenes ever.
Yeah. Yep. Completely.
I know social media influence the mass, and it's important for content creators to promote their work. But the surprising issue is that you left most of these social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram. What beliefs led you to this decision?
There's a lot of things. One of them was I wasn't getting jobs through them anymore. So I started this company, Super Alloy, back in 2018 so that we could make motion capture for games. God of War Ragnarok was one of our first ones that we did. And at a certain point, just nobody was asking me to do jobs on Facebook. And I won't get into the politics of any of this, but what I found is that people don't really talk like themselves on social media. It's like they become, not everybody, but there is a tendency to sort of speak as if you're 7 billion people when you're on social media. I don't know how else to explain that. Like if somebody says something on social media, they say, all apples are red. Somebody says that. And then there's going to be 1,000 people that just are going to try and assassinate this person for saying all apples are red. And whereas, if you're sitting at a bar talking to somebody and you say, hey, all apples are red, and somebody's like, no, they're not. I had a green apple yesterday. Oh, yeah, you're right. And it ends there, right? But if someone were to say all apples are red on social media, it would become a firestorm, and that person would be fired from their job. And I just don't like how the system is sort of made that way, and it incentivizes that behavior. It's almost like the worse you behave, the more ads get sold, and so the more the algorithm kind of likes you, and it wants you to be like that. And people have detected this, and they've sort of modified their behavior, and they've modified their content to appeal to this kind of thinking. It's like the radioactive thing is what sells, and as long as it remains radioactive, the better. And I have no interest in that stuff anymore. I find much more pleasure in just keeping personal contact with people via text, phone, email. I do messengers, also.
Yeah.
And I find now that I have better relationships with people as a result.
Yeah, indeed.
And also nobody wishes me happy birthday anymore. I noticed there are two or three people. my mother, and I got a friend in California, my wife. They all wish me happy birthday, and it's great.
Yeah.
Not like 75 random people texting me saying happy birthday. Who is this?
You don't know. You don't even know them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of the many reasons, and I'll tell you another one too. This is a technical reason. So I was doing action breakdowns on Twitter, and what I would do is I would take a Hong Kong action scene typically, and I would make a bunch of animated GIFs and just break down little moments in these animated GIFs. Talk about posing, action design, sound design, sometimes directing. And these were getting a lot of traction, and people would take a lot of notice of this. And this was actually bringing me some jobs. And they would go semi-viral sometimes, and people would ask me to break down their action scene, right? It allowed me to be very honest also, and being very honest about action design, which, means pointing out the good and the bad, even if it means that you might not be able to work with that person, which stuntmen sometimes are very reluctant to do. Let's be honest. Like, we're very reluctant to criticize some action nowadays because it might mean, we won't be able to work with that guy in the future. And it might be the worst action scene of all time, but for some reason we all go, oh yeah, awesome. That was a great fight scene. It's like, nah, I come from the forum, man. We're supposed to dig at that stuff. And so I was doing this on Twitter, and that was going well. And then at a certain point, I started mixing in anthropology, a little bit of an anthropology nut. I study anthropology on the side, and there's a lot of overlap with anthropology and ritual and all this and action design, because there's a lot of ritualized games, ritualized warfare, certain ways that people fight in wars and whatnot. And a lot of that kind of gets translated into theater, obviously, because theater sort of comes from all this stuff. And then that gets translated into cinema. And I thought that was a very interesting overlap. And what I found was that when I would mix anthropology with action design, I would get, instead of 1,000 retweets, I would get 2 retweets. It was almost as if the algorithm had looked at this like weird combination that I had made and said, oh, nobody's doing that. Only 2 people are going to like that. So I'm going to show this very little. And I think that by and large, people would have been interested in this stuff, but the algorithm was not. This is my conspiracy theory. And so I went back and I said, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the anthropology thing. I went back to just doing the Hong Kong breakdowns, and then I got 10 retweets, and it never picked up steam again. It's like the algorithm was punishing me for going like off brand and then trying to get back on brand. Frankly, I don't want to write for an algorithm. I hate these things. The smarter they get, the stupider they get. It's like the smarter, you know what it is? It's almost like the more data they collect, then the more it thinks it has a handle on what culture is. Like, it can just package something. It's like, oh, this is Chinese, therefore it's Chinese. This is Japanese, that's Japanese. And this is American, that's American. But like, we're more complicated than that. And the algorithm's never going to figure that out. And it's almost like the better the algorithm gets, the further away it gets from us. And so I don't want to write for that thing. I would rather do it with long form podcasts like this. I would rather make movies. And if it's going to punish me for that, then okay, fine. But I'm going to find my way around it.
it's also taking a lot of time, social media, instead of doing interesting stuff,
Yeah.
it wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
confess that myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, without a doubt, like, uh, look, some people do really well with it. I'll say that there are some people that have kind of figured this out, and that's not to say that the algorithm makes complete garbage. Some of these guys make
Yeah,
amazing stuff, and they go viral, and it's good. It's good that they've
yeah,
gone viral. There are some. I mean, I get envious sometimes because there are these anthropology YouTube specials, and it's 25 minutes on the first stone tool. Was it a weapon, or was it for carving wood? And it's got 15 million views in the first week, and it's like people love this stuff, and this is going viral because it's good and people like it. And but if you yourself as a content creator, if you suddenly want to like shift gears and change your brand, if you think you know your audience, it's like the algorithm doesn't care. The algorithm's going to kind of do what it's going to do. And it might have a handle on your audience, it might not, because if you have a brand new idea that doesn't catch fire automatically, you're going to spend a lot of time rebuilding your brand. And then if you're influencing, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy. Doing a video every day, not easy. It's a full-time job. Even doing a podcast, as you're going to
yeah,
see,
yeah,
as you're seeing now, doing just a podcast,
yeah. I
it's
must
a
say
lot
it,
of work.
it takes a lot of time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But bless you, man. I'm
Yeah.
glad you're doing it
Uh,
because this is a very cool podcast. So I'm very honored to be on here.
I'm, 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 I'm very pleased as well to have you, Eric. It's a great honor. And I have been thinking of this podcast for years, and finally it's happening.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for your support. What is your piece of advices for beginners and people who likes to start making action?
Um, get a camera, go out, make a movie,
And yeah,
and
That's-
and then just keep working at it. I mean, that seems very simple and kind of juvenile to say that, but and maybe I'm sort of speaking with a lens that's 20 years dated because I know now that it's very difficult to just go out and try and make a fight scene under a bridge somewhere. Like I know, I get it. That's it's not like the current wave of things, right? But that is how you
yeah,
improve. That is how you understand the craft. I think that the best action stars and the best action designers were good filmmakers and good storytellers. Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan are great performers, but they're fantastic filmmakers. Donnie Yen, Bruce Lee, Yuen Woo-ping, Chad Stahelski, Clayton Barber, J.J. Perry. These guys are great filmmakers. They're great performers, but if you don't understand the mechanisms that allow that stuff to go to the audience, then it's like it doesn't exist anyway. So I would urge people to work on their craft behind the camera as much as possible. Understand what it means to move on camera. Get critiques and be
yeah,
open to those critiques because your first movie is going to suck. Your first 20 movies are going to suck, and they should. They should suck.
yeah,
Somebody should tell you that they
yeah,
suck. I hope somebody
yeah.
tells you that
It's a
they
lot.
suck.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It's
first time I
normal.
do
This.
anything, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's totally normal to
yeah,
suck in the beginning.
yeah, and you'll put it on YouTube. There'll be a lot of haters. Read the hate, take it
Yeah,
in,
indeed,
soak it in, man. I
indeed.
mean, they're sometimes haters just post because they suck, but sometimes haters post because they're emotional about the fact that they wanted to see something cool and they didn't. And they're like, what the, what, WTF? Like, why doesn't this sucks? Why isn't it as good as da 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 da? And it's like, okay, parse that out. Like, this guy took his time to watch your thing. It sucked. He's telling you that it sucks in this kind of like, gross, toxic way, but maybe you can piece it apart and find something in there. I always used to do that. And people thought I was stupid for doing this, where I would really bring the hate. I would try to, and I would try and figure out what somebody was talking about. And once you kind of get to the bottom of what people are looking for and what they actually want, you kind of find like your most passionate audience in a way, right? Yeah, it's great to have cheerleaders, but it's also great to have people that actually want you to get better. That's the best right there, right? Is that people that point out your flaws so that you get better. That's kindness versus being nice, right? If you're being nice, then you're just telling people, hell yeah, great, that's awesome, good job, and what you did sucked, but I'm going to tell you hell yeah so that I can work with you, and you're not going to get any better. In fact, maybe I'll get better behind your back, so sucks to be you. But if you're kind, you'll tell that person, hey, that was a good effort. Wish your camera had been better, your performance isn't good, blah blah blah, whatever it might be, right? That's being kind. And I prefer a world where people are kind rather than being nice.
Indeed, yes.
And I would seek that out as a new person. I would seek out people who are kind, who want you to get better. Having a mentor is incredibly important. If you can find, if you're getting into the action industry, it's very standard to have a mentor, and I had one, still do. And find somebody who really wants you to get better. And it's gonna hurt. It hurts. It sucks. But that's initiation, right? That's exactly what initiation is all about. Is sort of like killing off your old self, become this new person. And that's what hurts, but that's what's going to get you there. That's my advice.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, to self-confidence if you want to keep up in this job, in this industry. It's really difficult to keep up, but it's a must. How do you see yourself 10 years from now, Eric?
Oh, I think in 10 years I should have at least one 3D animated film under my belt that I've directed. I have a script right now for one. Working on optioning a novel right now to do another one. I think in 10 years, what I would like to have is a tool that allows guys like myself, indie action guys, to very easily pick up motion capture and virtual production and make action films using a 3D engine. That's what I would like. And I'm trying to spearhead that right now. And the system is called Spearhead, by the way. And it's going to take a while because, again, it's sort of new territory. And in a way, it's not, because if you understand 3D engines like Unreal and Unity, you can just go and make your action movie very easily. You can do it for $100. Costs nothing. You buy a space station for $100, a 3D asset. You buy a $50 creature. You buy a $20 astronaut, and then animate them, and then you've got a movie for $200. But if you come from the world of Adobe Premiere, well, sometimes it's a bridge too far. And there might be a way to build a tool that makes it easier for example, stunt performers who are becoming directors, stunt coordinators who want to direct, that makes it easier for them to get into making 3D animated films using motion capture, using virtual production. And it sort of works like Premiere. And I keep telling people this is a secret weapon. If you want nonstop work as a previs director or as a previs shooter, learn Unreal Engine for 2 months and you will not stop working for the rest of your life. That's just the truth. And once people start catching on to this, I think it's going to be I think it's going to kill Premiere. I think it's going to kill Adobe, unless Adobe figures out how to compete with that. That's what I would like to see. Not that I want Adobe to die. I love it. I love using Adobe, but I think that like adding in the motion capture part of it allows a filmmaker now to rethink movies, right? Because as indie filmmakers, we're very limited in what we write, right? We're trying to find one location, scenes, right? Like if we could just do a movie that takes place in a cabin, right? Because my uncle's got a cabin or whatever it might be. Well, if you do 3D animation, there are certain things that are extremely cheap at that point. You can buy an entire world for $100. You can buy an entire futuristic city for $200. You can buy a flying car for $10. These things are impossible for an indie filmmaker otherwise, right? And they look really good. They look just as good as if James Cameron uses them. So if you can learn those tools, well, you can think about storytelling in a very new way. And now you can do your sci-fi film. Now you can do your film in feudal Japan. Now you can do your martial art movie involving dragons, because it costs you very little now in 3D. But there are some things that get more expensive. Like, for example, if you want to have coffee in a cup swirl around in 3D, it costs a lot of money to do that, right? That's very difficult. It's difficult to do hair. It's difficult to do certain things. So understanding those costs and benefits, if people have, if I can give people support in understanding those things and bring that vision to the screen, that's what I would like to be doing in 10 years.
That's really cool, brother. You know, I know you're no longer on Facebook and Instagram. Is there any way to follow your work?
I think the best way to follow my work is on YouTube and in my website, ericjacobus.com.
Yeah, okay. That's cool. So, thank you, Eric. I won't take much of your time.
Thank you, man.
It's been a pleasure to have you, and your contribution is much appreciated in growing this humble concept. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot, brother.
Yeah, man.
Have
So
a nice day.